Welcome to another episode of This Devoted Life podcast. We are so excited because we have a special guest on today, Whitney Newby. She is a pastor's wife and homeschool mom to 4 kiddos. Formerly working in the medical field as a nurse, she now stays home with her children and runs her successful business, Brighter Day Press. I personally have used many of her resources, from her full year morning time guides to some of her seasonal guides. She is a wonderful watercolor artist. You will find many watercolor tutorials on her website, and you will also find them in her new book, Lift Your Eyes, that is just filled with beautiful artwork that is from Whitney. So if you pick up her book, you will just be delighted with the artwork that is in there. And we're going to talk more about her book as the podcast goes on. But she's a joy to follow on social media. And I personally am encouraged in my walk with the Lord because she is always pointing me towards Him.
What started as a Saturday morning coffee date turned into a podcast where we chat about things like faith, family, finances, and so much more.
In a world that is encouraging you to live your truth and to follow your heart, we want to encourage you to live devoted to the truth.
The Bible has a lot to say about how to live a victorious Christian life, and we want to share practical insight in how to apply those truths to your life as we endeavor to apply them to our own lives as well.
If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a review and share these episodes with your friends so that you can help them live this devoted life too.
Hi, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes,
Absolutely.
welcome.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
I'm so glad that you
Absolutely.
were able to take some time out of your busy schedule to chat with us a little bit. And can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yes. So I feel like we probably have a lot in common. We both have 4 kids,
Yep.
and they're really similar ages. So our oldest is 12. And then we have a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 6-year-old right now. And we have 3 boys and a girl. And we have been homeschooling since the beginning. And it's just a lifestyle that we fell in love with and never expected to do that. So we run, like you said, Brighter Day Press. And actually, my husband and I do that full time. And we live here in Greenville, South Carolina. And we just moved here last August from Texas. And so this still feels a little bit new to us. But yeah, it's a joy to get to just encourage families and create these gospel-centered, literature-rich resources primarily for homeschool families, but really for any Christian families.
Yeah. So does your husband now work for your company?
He does.
Oh,
Yes.
I missed that. I didn't realize that he was now with you. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
so you're right. He was a pastor. He was a worship pastor for 10 years. And back in July of 2023, we got to a point where we needed to hire someone full time and thought, really, there's nobody better than him. And so since July of 2023, he has been full time, and he is in charge of all of our inventory, our shipping, our communicating with our accountant, all the stuff I do not enjoy. So he's really in behind the scenes, but he also helps write some of our resources. And actually, I'll be speaking at some homeschool conferences coming up, and he will be leading worship at them. So
Very
that's
cool.
kind of fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you get to draw from his experience, but in kind of a new realm.
Yeah.
Yes.
You probably find, like James and I find this all the time, is that you guys, I mean, you said that he kind of does the things that you don't necessarily enjoy. And we find the same thing. It's like God gives you that spouse that you just mesh and are able to cover each other's weaknesses. Like, I think that's such a cool thing.
Yeah, you complement each other well, right? You know, you
Yes.
fill in the gaps and make a difference. Yeah.
It is
That's
such a gift. Yeah. And to be working together, I know a lot of couples will tell us, oh, I could never do that. Work full time. And I mean, we're home all the time because we actually share homeschooling responsibilities. So
that's wonderful.
we homeschool every other day, and then the other one is working that day. And so that has actually, been just a huge gift. And who knows if we'll continue to do that for all of homeschooling, but it's been great for now.
No, that's wonderful.
Do you kind of each focus on a certain like discipline on the homeschool day consistently, or do you kind of trade off?
So yeah, good question. We've tried it both ways. And what has worked for us recently is I pretty much make the plans. So I know exactly what we're going to do. Our kids know what we're going to do. The only thing that's different is we are each reading a separate read aloud. Because I little tough if it's like one chapter, one day, and then
Yeah.
like we're missing parts of the story. But otherwise, we just continue where the other person left off.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That sounds so
Yeah.
neat.
Yeah.
So why did you guys move to, you said South Carolina? Is that where you're
Yes.
at? Yeah.
Yes.
What made the move from Texas?
Yeah, so we were in Texas for 5 years, and our family is all closer to the East Coast. So we
Mm.
have family in North Carolina and Tennessee. That's where our parents are. And so we kind of just chose Greenville because it's driving distance to both families.
Yeah.
And in particular, my husband's mom is dealing with some health issues. And so we
Okay.
wanted to be
Sorry to hear
closer to her. And it's really hard to fly with 6 people, as you know.
that. Oh, yeah.
We do, yeah.
Yeah, so we wanted somewhere driving distance, but we did not know anyone coming to Greenville. This was just kind of a little bit of a random move, but it's
Yeah.
been really good. We plugged into a church right away, which is essential for this kind of season when we're not really tethered in any other way,
Yeah. And right after you moved there, wasn't that when the hurricane hit too? And like you saw massive devastation.
which was wild because, yeah, we actually moved, I think, in mid-August, and it was end of September. So we were only here for 6 weeks or so.
Wow.
And we kept hearing reports that we might get some of this Hurricane Helene, which people
Mhm.
around here were like, we live in the mountains. We've
Right.
never had a
Yeah.
hurricane.
I
Like
even thought that too when all the
yeah,
news, stations were
Yeah.
saying stuff. I'm like, "Wait a second, North Carolina? What?
yes,
South
Western Carolina,
Carolina, the
all of that.
Virginias?" Like, yeah.
Exactly. So we actually lost our van in the storm, and we were all just huddled
Wow.
together. Thankfully, nothing touched our house. So praise God for that. But we
Yeah.
lost power for 7 days, and we watched a tree just crash down on the top of our van.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it was wild. It was
Yeah.
quite the welcome.
I would say that's quite the welcoming party there.
Yeah.
Welcome to South Carolina.
Yeah,
Seriously.
so did the Greenville area get much damage, or
So
was it?
much
Yeah.
damage. Yes. So I mean, still, there are parks around that, trails are closed because so
Mm.
many trees have fallen on houses and all of that. But really, I think way worse about an hour north of here in Western North Carolina.
Yeah,
So,
okay. Yeah, because
yeah.
I remember, like I said, the news saying, North Carolina and stuff. Did you, so I kinda just stepping back a little bit from the move from Texas and whatnot, I don't have any personal connection to Greenville, South Carolina,
Yeah.
but kind of in the circles that I grew up in, Bob Jones University was like a
Yeah.
lot of people I knew went there, things
Mhm.
like that. So Bob Jones is in Greenville, correct?
It is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
In fact, we were
Okay,
there the
cool.
other day because our son had a piano competition there. So, yes.
Okay. So did that have any bearing or factor on, like, where you moved, or was that just a
No,
coincidence?
it was just totally a coincidence. But
Okay.
I will say, because Bob Jones is here, there are so many homeschoolers here. And
Yeah.
so
That's awesome.
that has been really helpful. And I feel like the Christian influence of probably from Jones, there's also North Greenville University, which is a Christian
Yeah.
school, Anderson
Mhm.
University, all of these Christian universities. If you ever get the chance to come to downtown Greenville, it is so charming, so safe. And it just feels like, some cities you walk around and you just feel like
Yeah.
spiritually dark,
Sure.
and you
Yeah.
don't feel that here. And so I do think it's the influence of so many believers here.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
that's really cool. I know they have a big emphasis on fine arts and music and things like
Yes.
that, and so I could
Yes.
see where, just kind of a spiritual light probably.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
that is awesome.
Yes.
Um, I know that you used to be a nurse.
Yes.
Can you kind of tell me a little bit about what made you decide to leave that profession and stay home and start your own business?
Yeah. So I worked as a nurse for about 7 years, and it was a great job for being a mom because I could, my schedule was so flexible. So when we
Okay.
first started homeschooling, I would homeschool in the morning, which this sounds crazy to me now because I don't know how, with just everything going on, but starting to homeschool, and we had a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a newborn. And I would homeschool in the morning and then go to work from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. That was my shift.
My goodness.
And
Yeah.
then I would come home at midnight, wake up in the morning, and start all over. Although I wasn't doing it every day of the week, but I was doing it quite a bit. So,
Mhm.
so while I say, you kind of get the best of both worlds, you also get
Mhm.
the workload of both worlds. And we
Sure.
Yeah.
knew this is a season, this is not sustainable long term, especially if we're going to homeschool 4 kids.
Yeah.
But I loved working as a nurse. It was such a ministry for me. But when we moved to Texas. Let's see, maybe, oh, okay. We moved to Texas in 2020 and it
Mm.
was January of 2020. So I thought, let me just wait a couple months, maybe till like March of 2020, and I'll
Yeah.
look for jobs then. And of
Right.
course, everything with
Shut
COVID
down.
happened. Yes.
Yeah.
And no one was hiring at hospitals because people weren't coming to the hospital unless it was
Right.
a life-threatening situation. And so nurses were not getting the hours they need, and they
Yeah.
certainly weren't hiring. And so I suddenly had more free time than I had had in years. And
Mm.
so I started writing down what was really bearing fruit in our homeschool, which was our morning time routine. And
Mhm.
it was 20 to 30 minutes of reading the Bible together, singing a hymn. I mean, probably a lot of the things that you guys do,
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
reading aloud, doing history together, all of those things. And so I asked my small community on Instagram, would you be interested if I offered these for sale? And everyone seemed, I mean, there were a lot of people that were. And so that's where Brighter Day Press was born. And I mean, within a few months, I was getting ideas for more resources
Mhm.
and just kind of seeing a gap in the market of like what our family was looking for. And then I
Mhm.
would create that. And that was 5 years ago. And so I never went back, although I do keep up my license because it was way too hard to get it in the
Yeah.
first place. I don't
Yeah.
want to lose it. But
Yeah.
but yeah, that was kind of the way that God moved me from the
Yeah.
hospital to working at home.
I love when you can see how God's hand is in it. And it's just like when you take that one simple step of obedience and it just
Yes,
continues to kind of almost snowball into something you never even saw coming, but you know
Mhm.
yes,
that it was God who did that for you. So it's really
yes,
neat to see how your business. I mean, what are the odds that you moved to Texas and then COVID hit and you were like, "Hey,
right.
let's
Yeah.
let's start our own business," you know?
Exactly, because I don't think I ever would have started it had I stayed in North Carolina and really
Yeah.
been needed as a
Sure.
nurse. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
God just uprooted us for that time. And yeah, we're so grateful
Yeah.
ultimately.
That's very cool.
Well, and now you've written a book. Like,
Yes.
I
Mhm.
have been enjoying reading through it. I know it's called Lift Your
Thank
Eyes, and
you.
I just love that each chapter is short. So I'll sit in the morning and I'll just read like 1 or 2 short little chapters, and
Yes.
it's just wonderful because each chapter, I think the title kind of says it all, is Lift Your Eyes, and you're
Mhm.
pointing us back to Christ and what he's doing just in kind of the everyday mundane moments
Yeah.
of motherhood. So can you tell us maybe a little bit more about your book and what
Yeah.
inspired you to write it?
Yes. So, what really inspired me to write it was a publisher coming to me and saying, would you write a devotional? Because I was not out looking for a book deal. I didn't feel like I needed to add anything to my plate. And it actually took me about 6 weeks of praying about it and
Yeah.
just praying that the Lord would give me wisdom on whether to say yes or not. Because it
Mm.
was, as you know, it is such a full life that you have as
Yeah.
homeschooling and running a small business. I mean, a podcast for you guys. And during that 6 weeks, he just gave so much inspiration
Mhm.
and reminded me of things that I had already written about that
Oh,
I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, this may not be as hard as I thought. And
okay.
so I said yes after 6 weeks, but then he just continued to guide me in the process of writing. So it's based on Psalm 121, which is the famous psalm that begins, I lift up
Mhm.
my eyes to the hills, from where does my help come? And so basically, I just divided up those 8 verses and I identify one attribute of God for each of those verses. So he's our helper, our provider, our protector, comfort, shepherd. And then underneath those, like you said, is there are 5 devotions that are specific to mom. So
Mhm.
when I feel overstimulated and overwhelmed, when I feel like I've failed as a mom, when my cup is full. I mean, there's just so many
Mhm.
high highs and low lows in motherhood. And so I try to there are 40 of them. And so,
Mm.
things that I've walked through, but I'm thinking a lot of us have walked through.
Absolutely. Like, every time I read one, I go, "How did she know?" You know? But I think it is just there are common things that
Yeah.
all moms go through, like you said, it's just sometimes we feel just the heaviness of motherhood, and sometimes we feel this just, like, abundant joy in motherhood,
Yes.
and sometimes there's just the nitty-gritty faithfulness that you're just like, "Do I have to wash these dishes one more
Yes.
time?" And I think that you're very real in it, but nothing's a downer in it at all. It's constantly
Good.
just pointing back to Christ and just, even though this might be a hard season, this is
Mhm.
the fruit on the other side of it. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, it's the book that I would have loved to read even just a few years ago, because
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but this season of motherhood with ages 6 to 12 for us is, I mean, it is so much easier than even a few years ago. And so just to be able to see, and I know it changes in every season, but I want moms to see, especially younger moms that are a few years behind me. Some people have given this as like a postpartum gift, which I
Mhm.
think is perfect, because I want moms to know they are not alone in their struggles. Not only have so many women gone through these same things, but they have a helper, and
Yes.
he stands ready to help. And so how do we lift our eyes? Like, what scriptures can I point you to? I want to just take them by the hand in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times you get a lot of value just knowing that there are other people going through the same thing or have
Yeah.
gone through the same thing, and whether it's like our Sunday school class that the adult Sunday school class that we go to, a
Mhm.
lot of times obviously we'll be in the scripture, but then sometimes we'll just share stuff around the room that we're going through, and it's like, oh, this feels really good, or I'm in
Yes.
part of a mastermind in kind of my day job, and
Uh-huh.
there's a few basically companies around the nation, and we'll get together twice a year, and it's like they are going through, even though it's geographically different and maybe even in a different discipline of life and things like that, just that camaraderie goes a long ways.
Yeah, I
Oh
mean,
my
we were
goodness.
made for community, right? And so
Yes.
just knowing that you're not alone in your struggles, or,
Mhm.
Yeah.
just being able to celebrate certain things with people is great. And I love that you said like this phase that we're in right now is just so much easier. I keep telling moms, like, it just gets better and better. Like,
Yes.
so many people will say, like, "Just wait for the teen years," and I'm like, I don't know if I believe them. I mean, my son's
No.
12 now, and I was like, every phase
Yeah.
has been my favorite phase. I think the only phase
Absolutely.
I'm not gonna like is when they start leaving home.
Yes. Oh, I feel the
Yeah,
same
syndrome.
way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, I'm with you. We actually just took this afternoon, we took like a 5-mile bike ride as a
Oh,
family, and it was
so
our
fun.
first time to do that. Just, yeah, and I was like, a few years ago, I could not have imagined that we would be doing this through downtown Greenville, and it would be
Yeah,
Yeah.
so enjoyable, and there were no
yes.
meltdowns. I didn't change any diapers. This is
Right.
so amazing. So,
We walked
Right.
into a zoo the other day, and James looked at me and he's like, "We didn't bring a stroller." And I
oh
was
my
like,
goodness.
didn't even think to bring one. I was like,
Right,
"We are
yeah.
Yes.
officially in a new phase of parenting." It's great.
Yes. It is
Yeah,
so great.
obviously other challenges come along, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a great phase, and I
For
mean, I
sure.
think for you moms too, like, just literally getting out of the just massive sleep deprivation
Oh my
Yes.
phase
goodness.
is
Yes.
I mean, that's just a win in and of
Yeah,
itself, so.
listening to
It's
you talk about
huge.
being a nurse and homeschooling
Oh my
and
goodness.
parenting just, like, exhausted me just listening to it. I was like, God did not give me that
Oh,
capacity. I could
Yeah.
oh
not do
my
that.
goodness. Well, I think only just knowing that it was a season, it
Yeah,
wasn't
Mhm.
forever, was
yeah,
helpful. But also, I feel like, in some ways, I was using different skills,
mhm,
and I feel like my work at the hospital kind of made me a better mom, and
yeah,
being a mom made me a better nurse. But I was still very tired, so I don't miss that at all.
Uh-huh.
uh
So,
Well,
yeah.
going back to your book, there was one story that I read, and it was about your son. I believe it was Liam, and
Mhm.
how the doctors told you at your anatomy ultrasound that he had a club foot. Is that
Yes,
correct? Can
yes.
you kind of share that story? Because that was
Yeah.
one that really struck me at just like how God showed himself in that.
Yeah. So our oldest son, who's 12 now, Liam, I was 20 weeks pregnant, and we went into the ultrasound, and we're nervous as
Yeah.
brand new parents, and I'm laying on the ultrasound table, and I'm looking at this black and white screen and just glowing at the sight of
Mhm.
our son for the first time, and
Yeah.
seeing his perfectly formed head, his hands opening and closing. And I noticed that the sonographer was trying to get a better picture of something. She had me move positions a few times, and as a nurse, I ask too many questions. And so I proved her
Mhm.
with questions like, "What are you looking for?" And a lot of times those ultrasound techs are trained to not give you answers. You know,
Yeah.
they don't want to scare you. And so she said, well, I just need a better picture of his feet. I'm having trouble finding his feet. So a few minutes later, she leaves and consults another radiologist. And then she comes back with their joint assessment that it looked like both of his feet were clubbed, but particularly the left foot. And I will say she didn't have the best bedside manner, but she was like, don't worry about it too much, but you'll have to come in a couple of weeks for a genetic counseling session and also a more in-depth ultrasound. And she said, you know, if it's just a club foot, that's not a huge worry, but it may be connected to other genetic abnormalities. So
That's not what you want to hear as a first-time mom.
no.
Yeah.
And so I'm laying there just feeling completely deflated and defeated, like, you know, and just wondering if God sees or cares. I wish I could say in that moment that I just lifted my eyes to him and I'm like, your will be done. But in that moment, I just felt, you know, I had never felt just more alone and disconnected from the baby, disconnected from the Lord. And I laid there on the table and prayed, Lord, heal our son. And if not, I pray that you would just help me to know that you see us and that you care, because I did not feel seen or cared for in that moment. And so we left the office and we went to that night. We had a gender reveal party that had been planned, and people had come in from all over. And I didn't want to be a killjoy and say, well, there's something wrong with our son. So we only told our parents. But I was having the hardest time just fighting for joy. And honestly, all that I was fixated on was that clubbed left foot, because we had an ultrasound picture that I just laid in my lap on the car ride home, just of that left foot. And she was showing us how it was turned and how it should have looked and all of those things. And so we cut into the cake and everyone yelled, you know, it's a boy, when they saw the blue frosting. And still, I'm trying to have joy. I'm trying to be present, but feeling just so heartbroken over what is going on and the unknowns. And a little girl who was at the party, she came and she brought us this unexpected gift. And she had a gift for a girl and a gift for a boy. And so they were two different gifts, but she handed us the one for the boy. And I unwrapped this blue ribbon and pulled out a cookie cutter in the shape of a left foot.
Wow.
And the words underneath it were from Psalm 139. And it said, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. My soul knows it very well. And so I immediately started crying. And this girl's like, what? What did I do? And I was like, in that moment, I didn't know that our son was going to be okay. I didn't know the outcome of the story, but I knew without a shadow of a doubt that God saw and he cared, and only he could have orchestrated that. I had never even seen a cookie cutter in the shape of a left foot.
That's amazing.
And so that just remains one of my favorite stories of knowing that God sees, that he is intimately involved in the tiniest details of our lives, that he makes no mistakes. And so I won't say that, you know, I was just perfectly okay after that. I was still anxious about what they would find, but by God's grace, he did heal our son, and he's had no issues. But again, in that moment, I knew, okay, if Liam was born with no feet at all, God would walk with us through that, because this is no surprise to him.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, that story just gives me chills. And that's why I wanted you to share it. Cause like I was reading the story and I could just relate to you, because actually our son, when we got pregnant with him, you know, like first time mom, like you write out your birth plan and you just have it all figured out. This is exactly how it's going to go. Well, then he ended up being breech and I had to have a C-section. And it just was like, God made me realize that in that moment, he was in control of the outcome of this, and that my plans are not his plans, you know, and that ultimately that was for our good, you know? And so like, as I was reading your story about that, I just was going, man, like our first kid, and it's just this devastation of, wait, this isn't how I planned it, God, you
Yes.
know? And then when you opened up the cookie cutter, I went, oh my goodness,
Oh,
like, look at how God just like revealed himself. Like, I mean,
yes.
hours later to you and just
Oh my
like
goodness.
promised you
Yes.
that no matter how this
Yeah.
happens, I see you, you
Yes,
know?
Mhm.
exactly. And we didn't have, like you said, we didn't have to wait for months
Yeah.
to hear from the Lord in that. And yes, I had prayed that we would, that he would show us, but I never
Yeah.
expected it would be in the form of something so
Yeah, that's
clear.
incredible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
So,
sometimes we have to have eyes to see those things though too,
yes,
you know, there's just
totally.
like how often, like,
Mhm.
throughout the day do we miss those little moments from God where he's just
So
like,
true.
"I see you, I know what you're going through," and it's just like
Yes.
these little stray blessings that he leaves throughout our day,
Yeah.
and I just pray regularly that God will give us eyes to see those things throughout our
Mhm.
day.
Yes.
Yeah, and those
Absolutely.
are real faith builders as well.
Mhm.
And again, if you're distracted and blinded and not, in good stead with him, you do
Mhm.
miss those things.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very
Totally.
easy to miss them.
Yeah. No, that's
Totally.
awesome. I know that, like, that was obviously, like, an extreme example of, like, when things don't go as planned, but there are things, you know, throughout our day that just can derail us, whether it's, like, you have something planned and then a child gets sick and all of a sudden your day's upset. Like,
Mhm.
do you have anything that you do just to kind of reset
Mm.
your day when your plans get kind of upset?
Yeah, so much of motherhood is what you can't
Yeah.
control. And
Mhm.
there is a quote I read recently by Chuck Swindoll that was just that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it.
Mhm.
And that was so convicting because so much is about our reactions. And when you're a mom, your kids are watching those reactions.
Mhm.
They're watching, how if something doesn't go your way, how you either melt or you can, change course. And
Yeah.
one thing that has been so helpful for me is just praying aloud
Mm.
and in my need, because there's not a lot of opportunity to be in a still and quiet place and be on my knees and talk to the Lord with no distractions. And the thing is, He doesn't ask that of us. He just asks
Mhm.
us to pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances. And so, what that's looked like for me with my kids is to be praying out loud and whether in joy and saying, Lord, thank you for this glorious day that you've made, the
Mhm.
opportunity to be together, whatever it may be, or in need. Like when I
Mm.
feel the frustration rising, Lord, I need your sense of peace. I need your wisdom in this moment. And it's
Mhm.
amazing how quickly our kids become little accountability partners and
Mm.
they feel, the temperature rising in the room and they're like, Mom,
Yeah.
I think we need to pray.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Oh, I love that.
But I have noticed that so many times when we just take a step back, we take a
Mhm.
pause, and we offer our need to the Lord, our whole day can change, and our
Mhm.
perspective changes, and therefore our home.
Yeah.
So,
What a great example to set for your children of taking that moment just to reset with prayer, you know, I
mhm.
love that. I'm probably not the best at it because usually when I'm about to bubble over, I just, like, go and close myself inside my
Yeah.
bedroom
Well,
and
and
just, like,
sometimes that's
close
a
the
need
door.
too.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there I'm praying, but I never
Yes.
really thought to just, like, stop right there and pray, like, with my kids.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's a
Yeah.
great idea.
The kids are usually a thermometer, they go up
Yeah.
with you and not a thermostat where
True.
they turn you down.
Yes,
Exactly, and we as moms are the thermostat, which
we
is
Yes.
are.
a weighty role because
Yeah.
I know, I mean, none of us are going to have a good day if I am not
Mhm.
having a good day, you
Yeah,
know?
if
And
mom ain't happy, ain't nobody
it's
happy.
so true though,
I wish
and
it
so
wasn't.
Uh,
exactly, I wish it wasn't either, but even, when I'm not doing well physically, spiritually, emotionally, that spills over into the life
Yeah.
of my family. And the other is true as well. If I am doing well and I'm at least running to Jesus in my need, that is going to spill over to my family too.
Yeah.
yes, yeah, no
So,
question.
Yeah, there was a quote in your book that I hope you don't mind. I'm gonna read
of
it. It's a little
course,
lengthy, but I love
sure.
And I think it kind of ties in with what we're talking about right now, but it says, but what if we changed how we perceive the tasks we consider ordinary, mundane, and monotonous and instead saw them as faithful? What if we dedicated every part of our work to motherhood or to Christ and allowed him to give it value? When we offer our cooking to the Lord, he helps us see that there is nothing ordinary about nourishing or growing families with well-prepared meals. There is nothing mundane about patiently teaching our children to read and opening their eyes to the wonders of the world. As moms who manage our busy homes, we are privileged to continue God's work of creating order out of chaos. Our faithfulness in even the smallest tasks can give our children a glimpse of the beauty that awaits us in our eternal home. God's economy is vastly different from ours. What may feel like an unproductive season at home with your children may be your most fruitful years on earth for furthering his kingdom. I
Mm,
just loved that. Like when you talked about creating order from chaos and
mhm.
how it was a privilege to continue God's work. And that's really what this is,
Mm.
in mothering is work that God has given us to do, and we need to be found faithful.
Hmm.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. Thanks for
yeah.
sharing that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like I need that reminder even today.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
yeah,
Oh,
we
so
all
I just
do.
loved how you tied all of that in and just how
Mhm.
God's economy is vastly different. Like I remember a
So
quote
true.
from Elizabeth Elliot years ago that talked about how the interruptions that we have in our
Mhm.
day are divine and that
Yes.
it's really God's way of orchestrating our day. And I just think about the number of interruptions that
Oh my
come into
goodness.
our day.
Yes,
And it's
yes,
just like, okay, wait, God is bringing this interruption into our or my life right now. And
yes.
Hmm.
like you said, how am I going to choose to react to it in this moment?
Totally.
Yeah.
There's a place in the book that I talk about interruptions specifically, and that a little phrase that has helped me so much in that perspective shift from just constantly being frustrated by interruptions to seeing it as, a mission from the Lord. Like this
Mhm,
is what God has for me in this moment.
mhm,
And the phrase is change of assignment. And
mm,
so I would literally say it out loud. We had a very colicky little girl when she was a newborn, and I felt like she was crying all the time. And when I would be in the middle of, finishing a meal or just trying to sleep, and she cries out, I would feel myself like physically just
mm,
sigh, like, ugh,
Yeah.
and trudge down the hall and care for her. And it felt like such an interruption to all of my plans. And when
mhm,
God prompted me, I would literally, the way that I changed this perspective was to say out loud, change of assignment. My assignment right now is
mhm,
not to be finishing dinner or to even be sleeping. It's to care for my daughter that he has put
mhm.
in my life, for such, for his glory and for my good. And so I would say change of assignment and just turn my heart posture toward that assignment, which was my daughter. And I think that helped me in that season to just shift from feeling like this is drudgery to this is the work that he has for me.
Hmm.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
love that
hard.
you offer, like, a lot of very practical things, and I know that you don't do that always perfectly. I'm
No.
assuming there are days where you're like, "Oh, I missed that one, Lord,"
Yes.
"Sorry."
Oh, 100%.
But
Yes.
Yeah.
it's like those are goals to have and just something so simple as just audibly, like you said, praying out loud or saying
Yes.
change of assignment or just whatever it is that focuses your eyes off of your circumstances and back onto Christ.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
always need reminders, even when I mean, it would be really nice if you could just do something once and it's like, "I got this for the rest of my life,"
Yeah.
but we all know that's
yes.
not realistic, and so, these are practical reminders
Mm,
and things that you can implement, but, things that you can go back to
Mhm.
over and
yeah.
over again. I mean, it's just like, church, if we just
Yeah.
retained everything, we wouldn't have to go
Right.
back, right? But, going back on a weekly basis or even more often,
Yeah.
it really helps you keep things in the forefront of your mind so that you can use them in the instance. Because
Mhm.
again,
Yes.
kids are relentless, right?
Mm.
I mean,
Oh,
you have lots
totally.
of opportunity to practice these things.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, is there anything that you wanted to add, like, about your book? Like, is there a book that you are currently reading even, that you're
Yeah.
enjoying and that you would recommend for people or for moms
Yes.
specifically?
Okay, so I am actually, well, okay, one book that I just read this year that I highly recommend, and this is such an interesting, I actually brought it with me. It's called We Shall All Be Changed. Have you seen this one before?
I have not read that one.
Okay, it's by Whitney Pipkin, and I think it came out last year maybe, but it is, it actually talks about the death of her mom from cancer, but
Mm.
it's a theology of death. So you don't have to be actively walking through grief or walking alongside anyone. I mean, we're all on our way to the
Sure.
grave in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
And it is one of the most powerful books I have ever read,
Oh,
and
man.
highly, highly recommend it. So We Shall All Be Changed. And then right now, what I'm using in the morning is it's called Jesus on Every Page, and it's by
Oh,
David Murray. And it shows Christ through the Old Testament. And it
mm,
feels like, it almost feels like I'm in a seminary class. It's very
okay.
deep, very rich. But I love it because I just read one chapter in the morning and then read whatever passage it's talking about. And it has just opened my eyes to so much of where Jesus is through the Old Testament.
I
So
love
those are
that.
two
Yeah.
favorites right now.
Are the chapters fairly short in that
They
book?
are, yeah.
Okay.
They're like 6 or 7 pages. So
Okay.
you can do one in a morning sitting.
Yeah.
That's
So,
kinda
Yeah.
how
yes,
I feel when I read Spurgeon, because there's, like, he's got a
yes,
book morning and evening, and it's just one
yes.
page, and I leave there, and I'm like, I feel like I just sat through a theological seminar.
Yeah.
Totally.
Truly, just one
Yes,
page
it's
and the depth
similar
of
to
it.
that.
Yeah. It
So,
definitely deepens your faith and understanding of, when you go through the types and antitypes between the Old
yes.
Testament and New Testament.
Oh my goodness.
And it's, I mean, it's a story. It's his
Mhm,
Yeah.
story and it's just woven through time. And
mhm.
that's really cool. That's powerful.
Yes,
I think
yes.
nowadays, Christians just they wanna throw out the God of the Old Testament, but I was like,
It's
"He
true.
is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow."
Mhm.
The
Yes,
God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament are one. His
yes,
wrath and judgment and his grace and mercy work hand in hand,
Yeah.
and we
yes,
can't just pick and choose who we want God to be, you know? We can't
right.
have him just be all love and no judgment, but because he is all loving, he is the perfect judge, and it's
Yes,
really neat to see, like, when I'm assuming the book is like this as you're reading through the Old
yes,
Testament, just how God really is still the same
yes. It's
yesterday, today,
incredible.
and for eternity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the immutable being.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. Oh, so good. Well, yes, highly recommend. Jesus on
Oh,
Every Page by David Murray. So he's a
awesome.
Scottish writer
Yeah.
too, those are my favorite theologians. Sinclair
Okay.
Ferguson is my favorite theologian to read. He's Scottish, and I don't know, it seems like they're much more articulate than Americans.
That's funny.
Yeah,
So,
there's, like, a depth there to it that you're just
Yeah.
yes,
like, "What was missing from this writer?" Yeah.
yeah. So,
Well, that's great.
yes.
Well, can you tell us or, like, tell our listeners where they can find you? Like, what's your social media, your website,
Yes.
like that kind of thing?
So I am Brighter Day Press on Instagram, and I share a lot of encouragement for moms, but also book recommendations and just kind of daily life. And I'm also at brighterdaypress.com. And then you can find Lift Your Eyes wherever books are sold. So Amazon, I know it's in Barnes and Noble stores, which is really fun. So
Mhm.
yeah, wherever books are
Okay.
sold.
Are you doing any book signings or anything upcoming?
Yes, I've done a couple of them. One in Monroe, Georgia, and one, where else did I do? Oh, in Texas. So I went back to, actually, it was really
Fun.
sweet. I went to Keller, Texas, where we had lived before. And I had actually written the book in this co working space in the back of a bookstore. And so I went back to that bookstore and did a book signing. So it was
Very
really
cool.
That's
special.
awesome.
But yeah, I mean, we'll be at some upcoming homeschool conferences here in the next couple of months. Teach Them Diligently. I'm at 3 of those, and then one in Florida, one in Syracuse, New York. So I'll bring books to all of that, and we'll probably sign books there as well.
Well, wonderful.
So
I
yes.
appreciated you sending me the book. Like I said, I've been really
Oh,
enjoying reading it, so I'm
so
gonna kind of
glad.
put my stamp of approval on that and
Well,
just,
Yeah.
thank
like,
you.
encourage moms to do it, whether they are in the early years trenches or they just are kind of in the phase that we're in right now and just want the encouragement for the everyday
Yes,
faithfulness.
Yeah,
So
we
and it is
all need it.
authentic. So she's had it,
Mm,
on her bedstand nightstand, for
Oh,
a while now, and she's been reading it. And
yeah. Well, thank you.
she kind of goes through. She always has a stack of books that she's going through.
Yes. Oh, I do
Mentioning books, I was
too.
like, oh man, more to add to my to read stack
Oh
because those
my
sounded so
goodness.
good. But
I'm
Yeah.
right there with you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this was
I'm
fun.
always, yes.
Yeah, so like it's kind of interesting whenever we interview someone like yourself that has been in kind of Shanda's community for a
Yes.
long time.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm a terrible host or co-host because I don't really know you very much, and other
No.
than just, hearing some things. So it's always
Yes.
fun to get to know someone a little bit more and a little bit of your background, things like that. So I
Yeah.
feel
Well,
like
I think
I didn't
you
have
did a
any
great
notes or
job.
anything. I was
It's
just by the
okay.
wayside.
That's okay. You did so great.
sometimes I feel like
Thanks.
that's almost better because you get just like the raw, unfiltered, like, hey, we're getting to meet
Absolutely.
you. And yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Well, this
Yes.
awesome.
was enjoyable. I really appreciate you
Yes.
taking time out of your schedule to do this. And maybe, a year from now, we can sit down and talk about it again or
That'd
some new
be
things.
great.
But
Yes.
yeah,
Thanks
no,
so
this
much
was
for having
great.
me.
All right. Well,
Yes.
Absolutely.
thank you. Well,
Yes.
and I'm going to kind of wrap it up here. Until next time, we want to encourage you to seek God, love your spouse, hug your kids, and stay devoted.
Thank you for tuning in to this Devoted Life podcast with James and Shanda. We appreciate your support in sharing biblical, uplifting truths with the world. If you found value in this episode, please leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us to improve the show, and we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. To learn more about how to live a life devoted to God and family, head over to thisdevotedlife.com. You can also follow me, Shanda, on Instagram at devoted_motherhood. Thank you again for listening, and we look forward to seeing you next time on This Devoted Life podcast.